Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Expanded Health and Human Potential radio show. So I've been a little MIA from doing the podcast the last couple weeks or so. I've been really focused on certain projects, working on this book project and working on my chocolate company, which has been very exciting. It's about to launch very quickly here in a big way. And today's episode, I am extremely excited about. It's we're bringing on someone that has been very motivational and has played a big part in my personal life and why I'm even doing this radio show in the first place. And without getting into all the ins and outs of who this guy is, I just want to say my entire life, I've always gravitated towards individuals who have lived the ideal of I am in this world but not of this world. And people like my guest are more than merely trendsetters. They are thought leaders and persist in a world that's generally focused on superficial ideals with their own set of uncompromising virtues for a more inspired future. He is known as the rock star of superfood world, but in my opinion, this man represents much more than that. So without further ado, I'm bringing on Mr. David Avocado Wolfe.
Right on. Thank you. That was a great introduction, Ronnie. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you were really, you're definitely the person that got me started on this path 5 or so years ago, before I even kind of knew what raw food was, probably before I even knew what a vegetable was, to be honest. And it's really revolutionized my life in so many ways and so many other people out there. So just getting into this, I have a number of very specific questions that I want to get into with you, and I know that everyone's going to really dig this interview. So getting into it, I just want to say for the record and for many of the new listeners out there that you were like the primary catalyst for the modern day raw food movement. You know, many people see you as a dynamic speaker, an entertainer, a renowned nutritionist, as well as a prolific writer. But I want to know, what was really the inspiration from your very beginnings of your journey, and how has that affected you right now?
Wow. Okay. Well, I think the original vision way back when, actually back in August of 1994, was to really go out there and become a voice for raw foods and become the voice for it, and take it from something that was like this bizarre, sprout juice thing that you did in some healing clinic in Boston, and actually make it a mainstream concept where wheatgrass enemas would be considered like normal. And that was the original idea way back when. And now we're there. Now 20 years later, we are there. We're at the point now where it is a mainstream concept. I was on the Carol Alt show the other day, and we did 2 episodes. The episode that aired was about heart disease and that kind of a thing. The second episode, she did this whole piece, and it hasn't aired yet, on, I'm a raw foodist. I don't eat that kind of stuff. And she's just like she's in that mode right there amongst millions of viewers all across the world of saying, like, I don't eat that garbage. I'm a raw foodist. And like, it's cool. It's trendy. She's a supermodel. She's the best looking 53-year-old in the world. She's got all that going for her. And then for her to come out with this whole raw food spiel on top of all that is totally like a dream come true for me. It's like it happened. We got raw food from this little like sidebar thing that's, happens when you're dying, and you just to save your life on wheatgrass enemas, all the way to the like best thing ever.
That is really, it really is extraordinary. And I'm just kind of putting myself in your shoes kind of metaphorically, because I'm thinking back, like, really, when I started this, I was about like 24 or 23. I'm 28 now, so I'm kind of like, you were around the same age when you first got this vision, right?
Yeah, I was basically 23, 24 years old, right in that period, right in August of 1994.
Yeah, and so it must be really amazing for you to go from where it's just kind of like a little niche. It wasn't popular by any means, and like you alluded to, it's just kind of something that people did when they were in like a dire circumstance, to now, I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in the heart of this whole movement out here in LA, and it's like, it's a normal thing. It's actually like, people out here are like, if you're not into raw food, there's something wrong. It's like it's become a real trend, and it's not even just a trend. It's really become a real accepted lifestyle out here.
Yeah, it's not just here. It's everywhere. I mean,
right.
Just like that people, like I'll say to somebody, yeah, I'm a raw foodist, and they actually know what that is to me totally bizarre compared to where we were 20 years ago. That it's even mentioned on TV. It's even mentioned in television shows. It's worked its way into even films. That is incredible. Like what an amazing transformation in knowledge that is even an option for people and that people know that exists. That to me blows my mind.
Yeah, me too. It definitely gives me a lot of inspiration for the future and what I want to do in my life. So thank you for that. So we have a set of questions here that I really want to get into with you. So on the flip side of that you and me over the years, whenever we talk or get together at a conference or something, there's a consistent theme that pops up. One of the things on my journey that I had to contend with kind of psychologically was this whole concept of dietary extremism, because when I first got into raw foods, I didn't really understand kind of the negative side of it, which is really the extremism that a lot of people get into, and they almost like polarize it to where it becomes very unattractive. So for a lot of the people listening, I just want to touch on that with you. What in your opinion actually causes dietary extremes or just extremism in general that we see in these nutrition circles?
Well, to bluntly answer your question, the answer is people. People cause it.
Right.
It's you see it in every area. You see it in religion. You see it in politics. You see it in diet. There's going to be extremes because people are different, and not everybody has the same moral character or temperance as you or I. And so they will use whatever it is, whether it's the political position, the religious position, the dietary position, as a platform to launch their particular form of vitriol, their particular form of hate. So what really people are really doing is they're taking on a mask to disguise their hate. I can hate you because I'm a vegan and you're eating animals. I can hate you because I'm a raw foodist and you eat cooked food. I can hate you because you're destroying the planet with your diet and I'm not. Whatever it looks like. And it's exactly the same thing you'll see in politics and exactly the same thing in religion. And to me, it's like it's not mental illness. It's a soul incarnation problem. It's beings who are working at the soul level in their incarnation and they're discovering lessons of hate and also the lessons of extremism, which, in a lot of cases, I think it's an advancement probably from a reincarnation perspective in that they didn't reincarnate as a religious zealot who blows himself up in a dynamite jumpsuit. Instead of that, they're reincarnating as a dietary fanatic in which they can actually learn the lesson before blowing themselves up and make a soul correction if they pay attention to what the results of that behavior are over a long period of time. Because it's easy to be a dietary extremist for a year or two, but when it goes on for 10 years or 20 years, what's that really saying about somebody's soul journey and their character? So people ask me, they're like, is it caused by food? Is it a dietary thing? It's like, no, actually, no. Extremists are a part of the human condition, and it's something you have to contend with. And we're so innocent sometimes we get involved in like peaceful diets and vegan diets and vegetarian diets and raw food diets that our guard is down. We don't realize that the same beings who are religious fanatics or political fanatics also lurk within these realms as well.
Yeah, that was beautifully stated, and that's been my feeling too. Is that it really is it's a disharmony at the soul level, and it plays itself out into every fringe of society. And I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's really important for people to understand that if you eat raw food, it's not going to turn you into a fanatic or a zealot. It's just going to, I think it's kind of like money. There's an old saying that money is neutral. Money will make you it'll make you more of who you already are. So if you're a good person, it'll make you better. If you're naturally on the negative side, it'll make you more of that.
Right, exactly.
It just kind of reveals
it's
you.
going to, it's going to amplify things. And this is one of the things that's said about a lot of alchemical substances, including raw food and enormous products as well, is that it's going to amplify. When you fast, it speeds things up. It amplifies things. When you do a cleanse, it amplifies things. And so we have to be able to deal with the amplification of our personality when we deal with these types of transformational technologies, which is, how I consider all of that stuff. Fasting is a transformational technology, so is raw food, and so is cleansing. And you got to just deal with your shadow.
Yeah, beautifully put. This just brought up something that I wanted to get your take on. Something interesting about both you and me is actually before I ever knew who you were, as a child, I was exposed to, as you like to say, success technology, like Jim Rohn and Anthony Robbins and Les Brown and Napoleon Hill and so on and so forth, Wallace Wattles. Those were some of my scholars and heroes growing up, Bruce Lee. And when I found out about you, one of the things that drew me into your work was actually the fact that you grew up with this material as well. So for people that are on the health path, how important do you feel it is that they dig into some of that information to really work with their mental faculties?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think that kind of material can have an effect on your karma and what you attract into your life. And it's easier for some than others to assume an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of success, an attitude of prosperity. It's harder for others. It has to do with their karma and what they have to work through in their lifetime. So, for me, fortunately, it spoke to me at a young age. I was able to take those teachings on as part of my life path. It's helped me tremendously in my career, my life, and just dealing with every aspect of relationships, everything. It's been an incredible thing for me. More today, I still like that stuff. I still tune into the Jim Rohn quotes, the teachings of John DeMartini, but I'm actually more focused on more stuff that's kind of overtly spiritual more.
Yeah.
Seems to be more to the core. I think you're probably in the same boat.
Yeah.
And really working there. So, for example, I get the power of positive thinking. I also understand that depending on somebody's soul path and their karma, it might be a tougher road. So they're going to need more assistance, more aid, more tools. And it's not just the same template for everybody. For some people, it's going to be harder to get into that prosperity based on their life path and their karma. And we got to be able to assist and go deeper. And those spiritual books do that. They help you to get a little deeper into the soul journey and spiritual interpretations of reality.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. I definitely feel the same way. Okay, great. Well, let's jump into some new area here. This is a great one. So my feeling on this is when we talk about longevity, I've kind of come to the conclusion that the people who want to be here the most generally get to stick around longer. How much does living your passion and your purpose in life play into just outstanding health and longevity?
Well, Ronnie, I want to announce something really cool. My new book is out.
Yes.
Longevity Now book. It's basically a 400-page hardcover and revise of the old Longevity Now program, plus all the hormone stuff, and a new end section. I put in a new afterword conclusion to the book. And in the conclusion, I get into this whole thing about the number one longevity tool is to actually be enjoying what you're doing. How I'm a fan, like Steve Adler, of the great book by Glenda Green.
Yes.
Love Without End. And in that book, it talks about that death is a clearinghouse for false identities. And so if you're doing something you don't like to do, which causes you to be a person that you don't want to be, that can have a very detrimental effect on your longevity and on your health. It's probably the most detrimental thing. That's what I say in my book. It's probably the most important thing to sort out is to get onto what you love and find out where your passion is and get totally involved in that as your career. And then you're likely to stay here longer because you're more your real identity. You're actually happier.
Yeah, it kind of, I feel like just from my own experience, it actually opens up new avenues or new floodgates to new insights to kind of guide you along the way. So all the stuff that we're into, like all the food and healing technology, I feel like for me, the only reason it showed up is because I was consistently in my life moving forward on my passion, and it just kind of led me down the path that I needed to go. And now I'm kind of in a state of just grace and acceptance. Instead of trying to force my will onto whatever that is or what it has to be, I'm kind of just like, you know what? Guide me at this point. Show me where I need to go, and it's just led me to right here this interview.
Yeah, that's more getting in tune with the flow. I think a lot of the success information, where it goes away from the spiritual information, is it starts pushing. There starts to be a proselytization or pushing into the world of somebody's will, which may be totally rude or inappropriate, or you're not going with the flow, not listening to the signs. So you keep trying the same old thing when you should just switch your approach around and try something new. But no, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to make this. I'm going to make it occur through will alone. All of that kind of stuff is when it gets out of whack. And obviously, this is also alluding to this whole thing about goals and also about being in the present. Yeah. It's a paradox. If you're in the present, you don't need goals. If you're into goals, you're never in the present. It's actually the dynamic balance of both of those, right? And that's kind of like being in the flow, have the goal. You never know how it's going to show up for you. You got to be in the flow to be able to see it.
Yeah, one of my heroes, KRS-One, Knowledge Reigns Supreme. He actually, I've been getting into his stuff lately, and I've been blown away actually because he combines what you're talking about. And one of his quotes that hit me today was, "Without a vision for the future, there is no peaceful present."
Yeah, that's part of that paradox. There has to be some. So the whole thing of like the power of now, this moment's all right. is really, it's irrational actually. Mm-hmm. And so it's gotten people confused. It's like, no, actually, you need to know where we're going. We need to write the story of our lives. The universe is constructed like a story. Yeah. That's why we have such a tremendous affinity for storytelling, because it's intrinsic to the structure of the universe. And you need to write the story of your life, and that's called goal setting. And it works in alignment with the laws of the universe. And yeah, it's good to be in the moment and flowing with what's happening, but not perpetually, not in a chaos, not in a storm.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so moving forward here, one of the areas that you've been super into the last number of years, and because I heard you talking about it a few years back, or probably really the last year and a half, it's got me obsessed about it, and this is the field of hormones. And I've really latched onto this as well because I find it's one of the missing ideas in, let's just say the raw food literature, but just really in the overall health field. What are some of the research and insights that you could briefly just put out there, maybe relating to your new book on the hormone field?
Okay, well, I think you've got to start out with a little bit of understanding about what's happened to us in the present age, where we have saturated the environment with all different kinds of toxic chemicals, toxic minerals, all different kinds of volatile organic compounds, and petroleum byproducts, and xenoestrogens and fake estrogens. And this has had an enormous impact on the health of hundreds of millions of people all around the world. And these xenoestrogens have basically furthered a natural age-related problem, which is called estrogen dominance. And that term was coined by Dr. John Lee many years ago, over 15 years ago, maybe even 20 at this point. And Dr. John Lee wrote about that in his books, and he really pioneered this idea of dealing with estrogen dominance, which is a pollution-related phenomenon, but also an age-related phenomenon. So with age, we accumulate these types of estrogen metabolites as breakdown products of metabolism. And when our anabolic hormones, like in a woman progesterone or in a man testosterone, are counterweighted or overweighted by the presence of these estrogen metabolites, especially when we go through menopause or andropause, then that basically accelerates our demise. It uncouples and what's the word I'm looking for? Paralyzes our immune system. and it begins to set us up for age-related decay. It's like what Suzanne Summers says, and I love the way she says it. When you're no longer reproductively fit, nature's going to find a way to check you out, to move you off the planet. And that's not a soul thing. It's more of an animal body metabolic thing that we need to figure out, on this planet. Is like, how do we overcome that particular piece of the puzzle? So I'm going to just summarize it for you, and this is all in my Longevity Now book in detail. It's never been like this in any book. And let me tell you what I found out over the years, and a lot of this through the longevity conferences, is that the real future is going to look like this. This is something we're not there yet, but it's going to look like this. You have your juvenile hormones, which actually are the most health-giving hormones of all. They're the hormones you have from the time you're born all the way until just before you go through puberty. Then when you go through puberty, you have your sex hormones that take over. And when we go through puberty in the right way without too much xenoestrogen exposure, then we can go through it without the acne, without the extreme mood swings, without the chaos and confusion of those teenage years. So this is why it's important younger and younger to cleanse those xenoestrogens out and start thinking about it even, pre-pubescent kids at this point, so that they can go through puberty in a natural way and not be counterbalanced or outweighed by these unnatural, harmful, or even metabolic breakdown products of estrogens. Anyway, this is what the future is going to be, Ronnie, is that once we go through our sexually reproductive years, if we want to, then after that, we will get on a course of getting back to the juvenile hormones, which very likely will keep us in a juvenile state and almost an immortality state for hundreds or even thousands of years. I think that's where the human race is going, and I just want to kind of overtly say it. Right now, where we are is that we've got to deal with the sex hormones, which are volatile, and the reason why we would eventually go back to juvenile hormones is because sex hormones are volatile. They can break down. For example, testosterone can break down and become very toxic estrogens that can trigger off the reproduction of many reproductive cancers, the development and reproduction of many reproductive cancers. So, playing the sex game with the sex hormones, which is kind of where we are now on the fringe of our science, it isn't the future. It's just what we have to deal with right now as we learn that next step. And in order to do that, you need all the tools. And that's what I'm attempting to provide with the Longevity Now book is just detailing it out. Like the first step, methylation. You got to methylate properly and detoxify your liver so your body can get a handle on the estrogen toxicity, which to me is the most toxic substances that exist in our environment, the most dangerous, which is a real surprise. Like, what do you mean? Aren't heavy metals more toxic and dangerous? Mm-hmm. Not in my opinion. I'd love somebody to prove that to me. I'm of the opinion that heavy metals are not as toxic as some of these estrogen metabolites, nor are they as carcinogenic as well.
Really?
And so that's methylation, and then the next step would be the bad estrogen dissolvers, which in the lump shell here would be berries and cruciferous vegetables and their derivative products. Berries and cruciferous vegetables and their derivative products, and then the next phase would be natural aromatase inhibitors, which is such an amazing area that I love to research so much. It's brought to light some pretty amazing things. Quercetin, resveratrol, xanthohumol, the hops X factor, is one of the most powerful natural aromatase inhibitors, and then oleorupine, which is what's in olive oil. Right there you've got two of the top 4 longevity substances, red and dark wines, and on top of that you've got the olive oil. And it goes on like this, Ronnie. I mean, we could just go on for hours, but that's why I wrote a book on it. It just needs to actually be summarized somewhere as a reference so we can start getting a handle on natural strategies to deal with estrogen toxicity.
Yeah, this just popped up something in my head. I spoke at Lisa Wilson's Raw Food Institute a little while back, and I was going on some rant about Jean-Claude Mall. And and I was mentioning her top 3 favorite foods for longevity, and it was interesting what came out of. I didn't think about it, but it just kind of came out of my mouth as I was streaming this thought process. Was that it's interesting that she's the oldest recorded woman in Western civilization. Her 3 foods were olive oil in massive dosages, like you said, the oleorupine. Now that we understand kind of the compound behind aromatization. And then there was port wine, right? The resveratrol. And that obviously wasn't, just for clarification, that wasn't like boxed $4.99 wine, right? That was like high quality polyphenolic wine. And then I also thought this other thing about cacao, right? Because zinc is being stated as an aromatase inhibitor, a testosterone enhancer. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we're going to find, this is what I've been saying kind of in interviews, I don't have there's some theoretical pathways that would indicate that chocolate is an aromatase inhibitor of some sort or shape or form.
Yeah,
I think we're going to find that out as time goes on, and we'll get the real truth about it. Just kind of like what happened with Naked Chocolate. When I wrote Naked Chocolate, I said, it's very likely we're going to discover that chocolate contains some kind of monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which have anti-aging qualities and also can potentiate certain other substances. And it turns out that in fact happened. Cacao contains tetrahydrobeta carbolines, which are actually natural aromatase inhibitors. Natural monoamine oxidase inhibitors. And I think we're going to find the same is going to happen with these natural aromatase inhibitors. That because cacao is so highly regarded in longevity research, it's got to have something that works that principle. And just to clarify what that principle is. A natural aromatase inhibitor is a substance that blocks a good hormone from becoming a bad hormone. Just for clarity as to why that's so impossible. See, as I realized after a while from the research is that this must be a very powerful property for a substance to have. And in fact, that's why pharmaceuticals have been created as knockoffs of natural products like Arimidex to block metastasization of breast cancer using an unnatural aromatase inhibitor. Because that's what happens when these cancers get metastasizes and they start really running, away, is that the hormones are flipping over very rapidly. So a good hormone becomes a bad hormone and inflames the whole situation, making it worse. This is again related to prostate cancer when it gets into the bone or gets deeper into the tissue or in the lungs. Same with breast cancer.
Interesting. What I just thought about was, for example, you see a lot of bodybuilders from the 70s, 80s, and even 90s that obviously were taking steroid enhancements, and then you look at them progressively when they're like 50 or 60, and you see the flabbiness, you see they become very overweight, and metabolically they just become a disaster. Do you attribute that to aromatization?
Well, yeah, that's part of it. I see every bodybuilder who's really figured this out realizes you got to do a dance.
Yeah.
And when I think about this, I think of Sylvester Stallone because he's obviously been using all different kinds of steroids. I think he's probably been doing them very cleverly. I'd really like to talk to him and find out really what his protocols are and what's been figured out. Because I do want to say this about steroids. They're very powerful anabolic substances, immune-enhancing substances that do make you younger. There's no question about it. The problem is that they're volatile, and that you got to hold them in position so they don't flip over on you, or you don't run the risk of developing such over-enlarged muscles that you tear your joints apart, or you tear your ligaments apart, or you cause damage that way. In fact, joint problems is a very big side effect of all these steroids. So, we are going to figure the whole thing out. And when people say, are you against steroids? It's like, geez, first thing I'm against is pharmaceutical drugs.
Right.
Steroids do work and do make people younger. What we need to have is a lot more research on them and figure out exactly what to do to heal people and repair people, especially athletes, when they're used in the right way for short periods of time. Because I believe that's the future of steroids, because they do work. But when it becomes this like macho business or whatever, then obviously that's just an ego thing.
Right. It's kind of like you say sometimes about pharmaceutical industry is just really poor herbalists. So it's the appropriate dosage and the quality of the substances they're using. Right.
Exactly. Right. And so when people are like we have to stop steroid use, I really like the mixed martial arts world opinion on steroid use. If you have a really good fighter, and that guy's like now 44, but wants to compete, you don't have the testosterone levels when you're 44 as when you're 24. So they're okay with some testosterone supplementation. Personally, I'm not okay with it because it's too volatile. It's dangerous, especially without aromatase inhibitors being involved, right? Because the aromatase inhibitors can help to hold that volatile testosterone so it's not flipping over and becoming something extremely dangerous like a runaway estrogen or estradiol or something.